FTK teacher in York Region, and found it really interesting that as the classroom teacher, working with 2 or 3 other prep coverage teachers, and as well DECE, special ed teachers, ELL teachers, lunchroom monitors, EA staff who come in to help with the day with duty. It gets pretty overwhelming to keep connecting and reconnecting and driving the learning forward for the students. To honor the students' flow of the day, which is that the students' day continues from the minute they walk in to the minute they leave, whether they have before or after school care, whether they're playing outside during lunchtime, all of this we're considering they're part of their learning. And when you look at the 4 frames of the curriculum document, you'll realize that a lot of the social, emotional, and belonging contributing pieces are happening in those inside the classroom 4 walls time. So how can we recognize the strengths of the students and build on all of these amazing things that they bring to the classroom, that they've brought from home? Their parents are their first teacher. Their families are integral to this process. But we can't use that data when we're looking at our planning and assessment. But we can use all of the other data that happens during the school day. So I thought about how do we capture this? And I know that a lot of people use Google Slides. Teachers are using slides to capture thinking. The challenge with slides is that it's a place where things can go, and the teachers can take time to connect and reflect on that learning at another time. But I was looking for something that's going to help me almost real time realize what's going on and then be planning for the rest of the week or even the afternoon. So the thinking is grounded in why, and my why is why do we need to do this? I think because students are smart and capable, that they are in partners in this journey because they show us and they tell us constantly they're learning, but they do it in 100 different ways. If you've done any reading on early learning, all of the languages that students use. So it's our job to connect with that and notice and name it. So this reminded me a lot of the 6 C's. So when you're looking at the 6 C's, the 2 pieces that popped out, the C's that popped out the most for me were communication and collaboration. So there's one, I thought it was really cool. So the learning to me is like a series of knots. Here's our neurons and axon, it's our brain. And we know from research that the more you travel over it, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Having said that, that can go either way. That can be doing something wrong 100 times. You're going to really do it wrong most of the time, or right. And so if we are unlearning something that has been traveled, a path that's been traveled over so many times, we have to have a lot of support in there. And that support can come from any of the educators that are on that FTK team. The other piece is, as educators, we need to connect. So Dr. Jean Clinton, who is a lovely, very smart, intelligent, kind, empathetic woman who is a brilliant scientist, PhD out of Hamilton, working with early learning. One quote that I picked up from her, from a tweet from Jordan Appleberg from EPFO, was connect before you start to correct or reflect. So we've got 2 pieces. Use it or lose it with the learners. So constantly revisiting, building on, scaffolding, growing what we have for learning. And the second piece is the teaching with the educators, that they connecting before we start to correct or reflect. So I thought about that, and I thought, how will I know what to correct or know what to reflect on if I haven't connected? Then I got thinking about, well, who am I connecting or what am I connecting with? So I think as educators, we are really good at connecting with students and parents and the curriculum. That is probably why you became a teacher. You like people, or you love kids, or you really want to help. You're empathetic and kind, compassionate person built in already. And now there's the second piece that I was thinking about. we also now have this really amazing responsibility, especially in FDK 1 and 2 years, that we are connecting not only with the students and the parents and the curriculum, but also with research and technology. The research and technology are going to ground our decision making. And our decision making can happen on the fly. It can happen with a purposeful plan. But when you have 25 plus 5-year-olds in and out of your room, and you have other educators, DECE, EAs, ELL teachers, spec ed teachers, you've got your gym teacher, music teacher, librarian. And when they leave your classroom, the learning isn't to end. It's just happening in a different place. How are we going to gather all of this information so we can connect with what students are showing us in their learning, reflect on it, and then assess and plan appropriately? So I thought that sweet teams need to be built of these 21st century competencies. I've traveled the schools and my Twitter feed, constantly knowledge building, looking for something. And the knowledge building was that it's beyond paper and pencil for me. It's getting people in the right place at the right time together, which is incredibly hard in busy schools, as we're always constantly with kids. And if we're not, we're trying to get ready to be with kids again. I know that a lot of colleagues are using Google Slides. I find slides limiting because they are not a place where we can build further beyond collection of data and doing face-to-face pedagogical documentation, which is my goal, 100%. However, that time piece always comes into play. File folders and I are not friends. I tend to dump, shut the door, and come back to it and go, oh yeah, that was a really good idea. I should do that again. But it's not right in my face. But I've always got my iPad in my hand at school. And I've always got my phone in my pocket when I'm not at school. And at home, I've got my laptop around. Maybe that's because I've got 3 teenagers who are all home for the summer. We're doing 2 of them work in the summer and one still in high school. And I noticed that that is their tool to connect. It is not distracting them. It is helping them connect to the world, to their friends, to their learning. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. So Google became my friend. And that was through trial and error and some supportive colleagues at school, like Mike Cerullo, and then some colleagues at the board, like Jen Giffen and Kim Polishuk, who, whenever I have a question, I can shoot out to them and they come back. And then I think about it and I think, yeah, that's the learning I need. So my collaboration with people who are not in the classroom becomes how I can learn better to best serve the student needs. So the first thing I needed to do was open a class folder or create a class folder for every student. The class folder is where I dump all the student docs. So in my Google Drive, I create a class folder and I put a number 1 and a little dash at the top. So it always pops to the top when I open up my Drive on my iPad, on my computer, or anywhere. Although at school, I'm almost exclusively working off the iPad. This is really great news because every other teacher in our FDK has access to an iPad. So do many of the other teachers now. And if they don't computer, this will work with your laptop as well, with your Chromebook, whatever technology you have at your school. But the iPad is the one where both teachers and students can connect together really easily. So you open up a folder and that's our communication, start of our communication tool. The next thing you need to do is to create a doc for every student. It's a little tedious, but really necessary. And think about that, mostly half of your class will be half of your class again next year. So you're not recreating all of this for the next year, only half. And for those SKs or FDK2s going on to grade 1, they're taking a portfolio and evidence of learning with them to the next teacher. You just need to share that with them. And that's pretty simple thing to do. So you're creating a doc for every student and naming it by their first name, unless you have 2 Austins, and then you need to do an Austin T and an Austin M, and that will help when the computer needs to sort later. So now that you've got your folder and you've got a doc open for every student, the next step is to think about what you want to put in that doc. So I immediately thought about pictures and anecdotal notes. That was a really nice piece for me to start doing, to collect this evidence and share it, and the EC is doing the same. However, it's not connecting me to the curriculum, and that's something I've said that I want to be sure I'm connecting to. We know that our research and our technology are pieces we're standing on to help support us. So 4 frames were created. Sorry, forms. 4 forms were created, one for each of the 4 frames. There's 4 frames in kindergarten: belonging and contributing. So I made a form for that. I put in the student names. I put in the curriculum, overall curriculum expectations for that frame in a checklist. I put a spot for the 3 pieces that we communicate learning about, which is the key learning, growth in learning, and next steps in learning. Make that again a choice, and then a place for an anecdotal note, and you can drop in a picture. So now I've got a form for that frame. I've got a form for literacy and math behaviors. I've got a form for self-regulation and well-being, and I've got a form for innovating and problem solving. So now when I go to see what the student is doing and I'm connecting with their learning, I'm connecting curriculum to what I'm noticing in their learning. And that is getting automatically dumped in to that student doc. And the way that's happening is using Doc Appender. Can't explain in the next 3 minutes how to use Doc Appender. I'll tell you, it was a little bit of trial and error for me. I did need to lean on a colleague who knew how to use it before. I'm happy to walk somebody through it. Not an expert. I'm a strong learner in it, but it really made a huge difference. So now in that student doc, I can put in a picture, I can add an anecdotal note, and I can add in the curriculum connection through the form, because forms connect to docs through Doc Appender. This has been an amazing way for me now to sit back later and start to dig through the learning and connect students' learning to student learning to create a new provocation or to open up a new inquiry. That also, the good news about that is that all of this can be shared. Here, going back to my why. Why do we need to do this? Because learning happens everywhere. If learning happens everywhere and it happens with everyone, how are we gathering all this documentation? So now this folder is shared with every teacher who comes into contact in learning with that kid. Not the lunch assistants and not the AAs, because it's not their responsibility. I still have conversations with them, but based on their conversation, I can dump in information into the student doc because of that. So now I've shared it with the librarian, I've shared it with the ELL teacher, the special ed support who come in to support just a few of the kids, and I'm sharing it with DEC, my teaching partners who come in to support with prep. So now we're all on this document together, and we are able to communicate and collaborate. To go beyond that was kind of a bonus. The bonus was that I created a final form called the Room 133 Learner Profile. I again used all the students' names. This time I put in a copy of the overall expectations for each of the 4 frames, but broke it down again. So now I have 12 boxes. It sounds like a lot, but it's not overwhelming. It's actually really fast. What you do is choose the student's name. Maybe now you're talking about their communication of learning for June. So in a couple weeks, I need to sit down. I need to open up the student profile in their doc. I'm going to add choose their name, and going to drop in my assessment, my evaluation of their key learnings, growth and learnings, and next steps and learnings for each of the 4 frames. This puts it in an Excel spreadsheet. That's an automatic thing that forms do. Sorry, not an Excel spreadsheet, a Google Sheet. Looks like an Excel spreadsheet. So now I've got all of this documentation for the students in the spreadsheet. I can sort it any way I want. I can copy and paste, open a doc, and start creating the communication of learning that I'm going to be sharing with the parents. So my time is up, and I really hope there was some valuable information for you, please connect with me if you have tried something similar, different, or want to push this thinking further. I'd love to stay connected with you. I'm at Jill Stam, JILSTAM, on Twitter. And it's been a great Mad PD morning. I'm going to check in with some of my colleagues now. Have an amazing day. Thanks, everybody.